Hi, happy Monday. Welcome to the Wife of Caesar. Thank you for being here. My name is Michel Levien, or Michel Levien, either is fine. And as you know, the Wife of Caesar is Streiner's project where we try to discuss corruption using ordinary words so that we can fight corruption in our day-to-day lives with a little bit more than just good intentions. Great. So as always, we will have one section for the news, one section where we talk about relevant cases or important cases of corruption, and our typology section. Awesome. So let's begin. In today's news, we want to talk about the recent DOJ, that is the Department of Justice's, the U.S. Department of Justice's newest investigation into the Lava Jato scheme, which you might have heard as a result of the Odebrecht investigations. Okay, so briefly, you may have heard about Petrobras and Odebrecht in the news forever, for the past maybe 2 years, and you may think that this is the same case or that everything is it is the same investigation, the same adjudication or trial. It's not the same thing. It all stems from the original investigation. The original investigation was started by Judge Sergio Moro and prosecutor Marcelo Miller. And this is where they began reviewing some operations, and they found that some irregularities in Petrobras. For those of you who might not know, Petrobras is the state-owned oil company of Brazil. And what they found was that people were being paid bribes with cars, and some of these cars were actually owned by different companies, and some of these companies were actual car washes. So this is from where the name car wash or Operation Car Wash comes. Great. Now, after this investigation, they started reviewing more documents and obtained more. They obtained more information, and this led to the Odebrecht case and to all the different cases of corruption in South America, North America, not in Mexico apparently, but yeah, everywhere else. And that is the whole thing. Okay, great. Now, this investigation, the newest version of this investigation, has led U.S. prosecutors to start reviewing some operations by commodities companies, at least three major commodities companies, Vitol, Glencore, and Trafigura. These are companies that may not necessarily be U.S. companies, but they do trade in U.S. stock exchanges. So essentially, they sell their stock in the U.S. or through the U.S. That gives the U.S. the power to investigate. So they found that the United States Department of Justice found that these companies have paid bribes for approximately $31 million to public officials in Petrobras in exchange for classified information and in exchange for the assignment of contracts, which of course is illegal. Now, this is still an ongoing investigation, but the fact that the DOJ has announced it means that, or tells us that they have sufficient elements to obtain the necessary proof and to begin at least an indictment process. As you may or may not know, indictments are the first step in going to a criminal trial, but in these particular cases, they don't always result in a trial. There might be different types of agreement, admissions of guilt, different exits to take. But at least the investigation has begun, and we will have to follow that on the news. All right, so let's move on to the case. Our case this week concerns Cognizant Technology Solutions Corporation. Cognizant is a company that trades in the U.S. stock exchange and is part of the Fortune 200 list that lists the 200 most important tech companies. Great. So what Cognizant does is developing IT, and they outsource they offshore a lot of their work to India. That means that they have subsidiaries in India, and they began building a campus to house all of these employees. Now, the problem is that Cognizant has been accused of paying bribes to Indian public officials in exchange for building permits in India. Okay. Now, Cognizant is being accused of 12 counts, 12 different crimes under the US FCPA, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Okay, this is interesting because Cognizant has already been investigated and they have already paid a fine to the Securities and Exchange Commission, obviously under the same laws, the FCPA. Well, the company is being accused of three things. As some of you may or may not know, the FCPA punishes bribery, of course, but also acts around bribery, things that lead to or are a result of bribery. So I'll give you an example. The FCPA makes it illegal for you to go outside your country and pay a bribe. Yes, that's great. But it also makes it illegal for you to hide the bribe in your accounting. That is what we call the books and records provision. Or it also makes it illegal for you to fail to implement proper oversight systems. So, compliance programs. And if you don't do those, and you may not commit a crime, but if you don't have the proper systems, then you may also be found guilty of that crime. The purpose of this is to cover every front, so that if the authorities are not able to prove that you paid a bribe, they are able to prove that you committed improper acts that may or may not result in a bribe. Okay, so this is and these are the three main crimes that Cognizant is being charged with. It is being charged with the crime of bribery. It is also being charged with violations to the books and records provisions, and it's being charged with failing to implement proper compliance programs, proper oversight. Now, the fact that they have brought this action, this suit, doesn't mean that it'll necessarily end in a trial. In reality, the DOJ has only has the what we call a true bill of indictment, which is lawyers speak or fancy speak for a document that where 12 people say, yeah, they very likely committed a crime, so let's bring them to trial. These people are called a grand jury. And so that'll definitely end up in a court, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it'll see the entire process of a trial. There are other exits. But we will have to pay attention to the news and see how the Cognizant case develops. Okay, so let's move on to the typology. As we know, as we mention every day, a typology is an example or a version or an iteration of a specific phenomenon. So, for example, in the context of corruption, a typology for corruption are the concrete steps that you take to commit an act of corruption. So, for example, bribery, the concrete actions that you take to pay the bribe. Great. So today's typology is a typology for bribery. We know that the crime of bribery is the offering, giving, promising, lending, so on and so forth, of something of value to a public official with corrupt intentions. Great. So that is bribery. One way in which bribery is done is the lending of cars, luxury cars. And in particular, this has been relevant in Mexico and in some cases, for example, in Brazil, in the Lava Jato case, with luxury SUVs. What happens is that the company that wishes to receive some benefit from the public official purchases an SUV for itself under its own name, but never uses it, rather gives it to the public official to use as if it were its own. And this is just another example of what you would call a straw man. And straw men are the people under whose name something is owned. So in this case, the briber is the straw man, and the public official would be the beneficial owner. The beneficial owner is the person who actually gets to use the thing and to really own it. So in effect, the way this works is, or the way that it has worked in a lot of places, is that the company that wishes to get a contract buys the SUVs, the luxury cars, and gives them to the public official. The public official gives the car to its family or uses it for herself. And this is the way the bribe is actually paid. The person never really owns the car, but gets to use it as if it were its own. Okay, so that is it for today. Thank you for joining us here at the Wife of Caesar. We love doing this, and we love that we have you watching us. So please keep your eyes peeled for our next videos. We will try to come out with a video every Monday, as we did today. And if you want, keep your eyes peeled for that, or if you want to make your life simple, just subscribe below, and that'll do the trick. Okay, so before we leave you, an important message. Yes, corruption should be reported every time, of course, but never at your risk. So always report corruption, but only if you feel absolutely safe. If you're not sure of whether something you're looking at is corruption or something you found is an act of corruption, or if you're not sure that you're entirely safe, don't do anything. Try to contact someone who is an expert in the field. If you need help, you can always write us at info@streiner.mx. Let us know how we can help you, and we will do our best to help you. But always, always, always stay safe. Okay, so awesome. This has been the Wife of Caesar. Thank you for joining us, and see you later.